AB, you had a great article, I believe yesterday, but at some point this week, talking about the best case scenario for Michigan this fall, the worst case scenario for Michigan this fall on the football side of things. So we can let you start, but let's start with the best case. I think we're all going to have a similar answer to this one, but where do you see the best case scenario for Michigan being?
Yeah, I mean, there's an important distinction here. Is it best case as in this is what we're all rooting for, or best case in terms of what I think the team's capable of? And that's the way I chose to frame this. The best case, I think, is that they can win them all and win this national title this year. I think that the sky's the limit. I think that you go back and you look at all the guys that decided to return. You add the transfers into the mix, add in some young up and comers, some new blood into the mix, new blood on the coaching staff. Georgia is rightfully probably the favorite to win it, just given what they've done the last few years, and they've kind of supplanted Alabama in terms of the football factory, so to speak. Though I think Bama will remain in the mix, but we've talked about this before. Michigan just has less questions than a lot of those teams, around them in the Vegas odds, in the computer rankings. I don't care what the computers say. Last 2 years, the computers have given Michigan like a 20% chance to beat Ohio State. And, given the way that both of those games went, I think you could make the argument that maybe the computers should have had it flipped. So for me, best case scenario, this is a team that can do everything that it says it can.
Yeah, you know what? You'll care more about the what the computers think when we're subservient to them here in about 100 years when AI takes over. So, yeah. But I will say that, best case, that's, ditto is all I can say. There's no question that this team can win every game on the schedule, assuming everybody stays healthy. Say JJ McCarthy were to go down, that would be horrible. And then you're adjusting your basically your projections. I still think they could win most games on the schedule, depending on how the backup quarterback plays, if you've got, the running backs they have and everything else. But he is by far the most important player to stay healthy this year. I don't think there's any question about it. So, but they won't be tested until week 6, I think. They go to Nebraska in week 5, and maybe if Nebraska plays above its head, we know that's a tough place to play. Minnesota, I think, could be a tricky one. But you know what? I think the worst case scenario, I'll bring that up right now, guys, is maybe you get banged up or something like that. Maybe you lose to Penn State, and then you lose to Ohio State, and you don't even make the Big Ten championship game. So I think that's certainly a possibility. People, will say, "Oh, there's no way that can happen." Well, sure it can. Those are talented football teams. You play one on the road in an extremely tough environment, and Ohio State's going to be out for blood. So, and that's a talented football team. So, do I expect it? No. If we do the gun to my head thing again, I'd say Michigan's going to be your Big Ten champion. So at the same time, I think that's the worst case scenario. I don't see them losing any of the other games on the schedule unless somebody sneaks up on them, or maybe eight reviews go against them at Minnesota or something like that. And there are some questions.
That would never happen.
That would never happen.
Never happen. Not once.
Yeah.
Yeah. The gun to your head thing is going to become a new segment, I think. But
there you have it.
I'm going to go best case. They're lifting that trophy January 8th, 2024 in Houston at NRG Stadium. And I think that could happen for this Michigan team. I don't think that's a huge bombshell or anything. I'm in AB. You had, I'll spoil it, I guess, 9-3 as the worst case. I'm maybe a little bit more of like, hey, anything can happen. I mean, I got like 7-5 is my worst case. I mean, you could have some injuries. You drop one you shouldn't. We're talking worst case here.
Right.
You drop one you shouldn't. I'm thinking, doubts start to creep in like 2007 season. They turned things around, but it was too little too late to really salvage a special season. That Nebraska-Minnesota stretch, maybe you drop one. You lose at Michigan State. Maryland, is a tough one. Penn State, Ohio State, we know are going to be challenging. So that's my worst case. I don't think that'll happen or anything close to it. I think Michigan will win 10-plus games, and I would even hit the over on the 10.5, which Vegas has it at. But am I crazy for thinking they could lose 5 games somehow?
No, you're not. If we look at 2005, like you said, go back to then, 2005 even, when Mike Hart got hurt, and then, everybody else got hurt, and Jake Long got hurt, and it could be tough. Yeah, Carlos Brown. So, but you know what? Yeah, I mean, that it would take it'd take a lot to get there, I think. But
I agree.
Certainly, not out of the realm of possibility. And of course, we hope to God that doesn't happen. That means that something happened to JJ, or something probably happened to Blake Corum too. So, let's not even talk like that.
Well, for the purposes of the exercise, I mean, I'll say that I said 9-3 is the worst case simply because, like, I think it's the most realistic, quote unquote, worst case scenario. Obviously, you think back to 2007, they go 8-4 that year, or 9-4, including the bowl win. You just never know what can happen. I feel like this team is too. I think the player leadership is too good. I think that they are too competently coached to probably be, unless there's a devastating injury, to be anything worse than 9-3. I'll move real quick to what I think would be, 9-3 would be frustrating because it means, you're probably going to like Orlando or Jacksonville to cover a bowl game that, nobody cares about. Everyone, the guys that can would opt out of it, and that would be frustrating. I think the most frustrating though would be one of those 10-2 type of seasons where, let's just say, you lose to Michigan or to Penn State, lose to Ohio State. You're sitting at 10-2, which is like 10 wins by most metrics would be okay. You had a pretty good year, and it could still be a pretty good year because sometimes things just don't go your way. You have a couple of those coin flips in there, but you'd probably still be in a New Year's Six bowl, but nobody wants that. And there are the diehards that will take that and they will travel wherever because it's Michigan football. I wouldn't be fired up about that. I mean, this is a college football playoff. This is at least college football playoff or bust for me. So to kind of revert back to what those 2016 through 2018, 2019 was, where you win 10 games but you lose to your two best opponents on the schedule, and you kind of just don't have anything to show for a double-digit season. That would be, to me, the most frustrating. Not the worst case scenario, but the most frustrating, especially because, when you talk about worst case, we know that there's probably a bad break that somewhere, there's a lot of injuries. You can kind of explain those away. But if this group as constructed went 10-2, that would be very, very frustrating.
It's a good point. And it's on the table. And that's why we were talking about this in our chat today. I think there is pressure on this team that they've put on themselves to win, because you have the roster, you have the pieces, you have the coaching staff, and you don't know how long that's going to last. I mean, there are going to be a lot of guys that go pro after this season. You could get some back, but this team, as currently constructed, as you said, is really, really high level, and maybe as good as it'll get in a long time. Maybe that doesn't mean they finish 12-0 again like they did last season. That's why, the pressure is there to go seize this opportunity when they have it. But that would be frustrating, I think, and even more frustrating probably would be the Gator Bowl scenario you laid out, being out in Jacksonville. I can just picture it's drizzling, raining on January 1 or whatever. But yeah, so don't go 7-5, don't go 8-4 at the very least.